Runcorn Shopping City was the solution to the need of establishing a complete town centre for Runcorn's new town. The resulting complex of buildings was the result of months and months of planning, designing and engineering. This continuous process lasted right into the middle of its construction and would accumulate a number of other agencies and investors to make it a reality. If you haven't watched part 1 of this series, it would be useful to understand the underlying situation of Runcorn Newtown from 1964 when it was first designated to 1968 when construction was underway. In this video, we'll look at the very long, very sophisticated planning of Runcorn's shopping city. Runcorn Development Corporation's town centre team consisted of many disciplines and talented people who were incredibly forward-thinking, well-read and ambitious in their desire to not only meet requirements but attempt to provide a new world solution to make quality of life better using the most advanced technology and pioneering construction techniques of the day. Arthur Ling was the producer of Runcorn's master plan, but an entire team of people dedicated to the town centre are responsible for the design of Shopping City. Unlike famous architects like Le Corbusier, or famous buildings like the World Trade Center or the Empire State Building, there is no wealth of documentaries, publications, or even interviews with many of the people involved here. In fact, many were probably just government-appointed contractors and analysts who were assigned to this project and who moved on to the next job when it was all done. Some exceptions are the key people who were involved, such as Fred Lloyd Roche, chief architect, later replaced by R.L.E. Harrison, the latter of whom was on a Canadian documentary looking back at Runcorn Newtown, its objectives and what people thought some years later, having lived in them. Another is David Gosling, Deputy Chief Architect, who was later replaced by Keith Smith, the former of which went on to produce a number of books on the design of retail systems and planning and was a scholar at the University of Sheffield, later of Cincinnati in the USA. Some of these key people were on record and interviewed or sharing their findings from their careers as architects, planners and artists with the world. This is where much of the insight in this video comes from. There are many others who I cannot find information on, but as I cannot credit them, their legacy will hopefully be honoured as you learn more about the end result of what they worked on at Runcorn. When it came to drawing up the architectural plans, everything at Runcorn's new town centre was determined by solving a technical problem. Every design decision must solve a problem. So what were the problems and solutions that were found? Segregation of traffic. Early models concluded that pedestrians, public transport, cars and service vehicles would be vertically separated, that is to say on different physical levels. Each solution for these would need to integrate practically. Walking routes provided pedestrians easy, equal access alongside easy, free-flowing private car routes on the expressway, and a separate exclusive road network just for buses covering public transport in the form of the busway. Convenience and quality of life. This is what ultimately led to the decision to put everything under one roof. Integration of multiple priorities. To be well connected to other parts of the town and not all be centred around shopping, but also high density housing, offices, leisure, social and welfare buildings. To accommodate the upcoming boom in car ownership and eliminate the problems of nearby, decent quality parking for whatever your reason to visit the town centre. 5,500 spaces were ultimately provided, of an 85-15 modal split between people arriving by car and only 15% by other means. 8 multi-storey car parks were planned initially to be built across multiple phases. Of course, we only ever actually got 4 with a capacity of 2,400 spaces. The ability to expand with future needs, trends, societal demands that could not be envisaged at the time. This was achieved in theory with the final land zoning decisions of the complex, notably Southern Loop site, which was to be the last, much later finished phase. Putting everything on a single raised deck level was a key decision and worked well with the valley site's topography. It also played well in keeping the shopping level in line with the adjoining neighbourhoods, allowing pedestrians to conveniently walk across without going down or uphill in most cases. The Development Corporation consulted Drivers Jones and Company as shopping consultants, as well as the Multiple Shops Federation in refining their concepts around how to use the interior space. Why was Runcorn's shopping city so big? For a small town, even of the projected 100,000 people, the amount of retail space can be considered excessive. In the 50s and 60s, motorways were rapidly being built up and down the UK. The planners reckoned that this and the impact it would have on society and how far people were willing to travel more regularly drastically increased any precedent for a catchment area. People as far as Liverpool and Chester were thought not only to have easy commutes to Runcorn, but could and would choose to travel there regularly just for shopping. Increased mobility and changed living standards were set to ensure that building such a large retail centre would not be in vain. On the ground level of the valley site, there were four large loops which circled around the town centre. These ran north-south and carried the major traffic movements. This was based off the Kenzo Tange's Tokyo Bay project, racetrack-like in its design. Unlike today, there were no roundabouts or adjoining sites. Driving to the shopping city was a smooth, seamless, congestion-free experience right off the fast-moving expressway network of the town. The road network nicely broke up the site's plan. The North Loop was where the civic amenities, offices, and regional bus station would be located. The two central loops, home to the shopping centre core, and the Southern Loop, zoned for future development of a leisure complex with entertainment amenities. A megastructure was the clear solution to the technical challenges the planners wished to overcome, but how would the structure be composed? A number of models and ideas were considered, including one with car parking entirely below the sales and storage levels of the town centre, but these were rejected due to the structural requirements for a multi-storey car park, and the structural requirements for large loading bays and the movement of stock between bay and shop floor. For reasons of flexibility and structural economy, car parking was decided to be located on separate car park multi-storey structures which flanked the shopping centre area. The ground floor underneath shops would be the bay loading and storage area. Vehicular circulation through the four loops would be one-way and free-flowing. This enabled fast entry and exit for motor cars and loading vehicles. Four multi-storey car parks with four split levels were decided on, giving no more than 2 flights of stairs from any given parking space to the mall entrances. The mall layout itself revolved around a central corridor running from north to south, connecting the Southern Loop's entertainment complex with government and office space to the north. Cross malls were how the car park entrances would lead to the main mall. Overdeck housing was still on the table at this stage, over the north and south edges of the shopping centre, which were to act as yet another passageway across the town centre. The rapid transit network, later to be known as the busway, was now planned to run as a viaduct around the centre at deck level, with direct access to the centre. A north and south stop, with the north to be completed in phase 1. Here's where we get into the concrete details of the megastructure itself. A 108 feet supergrid of squares, joined by an intertwined network of smaller squares at 18 feet each, provided a large span of steel towers known as service towers, which held up the reinforced concrete flooring and lightweight steel truss roof pyramids. These towers acted as vertical access points between levels and were key to achieving flexibility goals. Initially, the roof structure was to be a series of lightweight aluminium space frames, allowing light consistently into the whole of the centre. The decision to go 108 feet on the span of the grid was, as previously mentioned, to support the maximum size possible for the Verendale girders for the floating overdeck housing that was still at this point being considered. This size was also the maximum for fire compartmentation. The new town was a government project, and providing for human needs in an economical way was key to justifying the spend of public money. Whilst it was an ambitious feat to try and solve much bigger problems for urban planning, it could be argued that the extent to which these public sector appointed architects and engineers were putting into what was effectively a shopping centre site for private companies to profit on is open to criticism on whether or not they were making good use of the public's tax money. When approval was sought from the Ministry of Housing and Local Government in 1967, approval of the plan for the new town centre, as it was presented, was completely dependent on finding private funding for a substantial portion. The Development Corporation was firm on its belief that the most effective way to recover the public's money invested by the government was through the commercial sector, as opposed to over-depending on housing rent or industry. It submitted a formal application in March 1967 for approval of the project, with an estimate that the total capital cost would be returned by year 22, 1989. The developer for the project was Grosvenor, the landowner for much of the land used in the new town. Its experience in managing diverse and large land holdings with a substantial financial prowess to put into the project was a necessary and powerful combination in making the Development Corporation's vision a reality. Agreement came in the form of a 125-year site lease, and construction was undertaken of the complete shopping centre and car park buildings. The Development Corporation carried out the infrastructure and site works, as well as the relocation of existing traders in the new town, administration and maintenance of the centre, and car parking charges. Here, a formula was devised that would work to recover costs. Ground rent was to rise from a base level in year 1 to an agreed level in years 14 to 21, and subject to 7 yearly reviews relating to shop rental levels. This was thought to guarantee the corporation a minimum return from the project and a share in what was hoped to be increased value over time. The Development Corporation's chief architect and chief engineer were appointed to the project by Grosvenor, who were to pay professional level fees to the Development Corporation. The whole project was now financially viable, with the business and financing taken care of thanks to Grosvenor taking on the project and providing substantial private funding. It was time to press on. Grosvenor accepted the corporation's current design plans, but had one major early change prior to construction, which was to abandon the idea of phased construction and to go right ahead in building the complete shopping complex in one go. Working closely with Grosvenor's managers and consultant quantity surveyors, the Development Corporation's architects and engineers were penning the final plans to be constructed. A working party met weekly to discuss and draw up the intricate details for construction. Construction started in 1968. From these regular collaborative meetings, some significant changes occurred into construction, largely dictated by the developer. The service level or ground floor entrances, which previously only had an east-west entrance under the middle of the centre, were now also opened up to pass through the north and south elevations. The final mall layout was drastically changed. The more imaginative and unique layout the Development Corporation had intended was changed by Grosvenor. It was now more of a sideways H plan with two cross malls on the north and south leading to the car parks. Major supermarkets were now moved closer to car park entrances in order to make shopping trolley journeys shorter from Till to Trunk. Many more smaller shops were located close to the central square. An upper level would be present around the central square, with service-based traders taking up the space. Traders would be given the option of expanding shop floor space by being encouraged to make use of a mezzanine level below the shopping deck. The lightweight tubular space frame roof, which would provide a completely daylit shopping experience, was abandoned on cost grounds. This is probably the biggest change to the final centre. The square pyramid roof structures composed of intersecting steel trusses were introduced here as a compromise. The district heating plant, located close by and shared with the adjoining Southgate estate, was to heat the centre with an opt-in plan available for shop traders via metered supplies. Originally, the Development Corporation intended to use the same ceramic white tiles from the exterior on the interior of the centre, walls and floors. Grosvenor had changed this in favour of higher quality materials, off-white terrazzo flooring in 9 feet sections with brass joint strips, and 150mm white marble lined walls in between shop unit openings. Ventilation of the covered centre came between the top of the wall edges, with the ceiling a 75mm deep vent pumping fresh air and heat into the centre. The ceiling was to be fully illuminated and suspended. This was formed of 600 by 600mm PVC profiled panel diffusers. Last minute changes were made between the developer and some key tenants with interest in occupying Shopping City. Many of the challenges of changing layouts last minute led to no real cost or time implications thanks to the utter flexibility of the supergrid structure. Some of the biggest national retailers were invested. It was full steam ahead towards construction. Runcorn's Halton Valley would never look the same again. The primary contractor for Shopping City was John Lang. The sheer scale of the project would dictate that only one of the largest and most established construction firms in the UK at the time would be appointed. The project was ultimately completed on time and within budget, and the construction company viewed the opportunity to boast about making history. It's interesting here that the term, not the name, Shopping City was used to describe somewhat of a new concept, insinuating that perhaps further shopping cities would be built elsewhere. The project had the following headline material orders: 85,000 cubic yards of concrete, almost 3,500 tons of steel, 10,000 linear yards of conduit, over 805,000 bricks, 8,500 linear yards of electrical trunking, 19,000 square yards of blocks, over 1,500 square yards of white marble, over 6,000 square yards of terrazzo flooring, 21,000 square yards of tiling, and nearly 5,000 square yards of glass. And yes, most of that glass probably was shop window glass and not the daylight filling kind. Shopping City opened for trade on the 4th of November 1971. It would officially be opened by Queen Elizabeth II in May 1972. We've looked at how Runcorn Development Corporation started investigating what the new town centre at Runcorn would look like and how its ambitions to overcome much of the problems they saw in conventional towns took the form of the shopping city. An entire town centre under one roof. It produced Europe's largest indoor covered shopping mall. We saw how appointment of Grosvenor as a private developer gave the green light to the entire concept. Remarkably, the finished result on opening day was close to some of the earliest preliminary models. We'll go on to explore the grand opening of the shopping city by royal visit and see it in its early years of trading. How did the public at the time respond to the space age new focal point of their town? What did the critics at the time think, and how did years of reality impact the original designers and architects' opinions on their grand concepts? Keep an eye out for the next part of this series.